Well, hello, everyone. My name is Mighty Stream, and I'm going to continue the coverage of step one from our Narcotics Anonymous step working guide. I'm on page 5. You're looking at a PDF file, but hopefully you have your flat book and you can follow right along. Now, 4 days ago, I left you at bullet number 10. I covered bullet number 10. Discovered that the numbering on the PDF file was not accurate. However, this is bullet number 10, even though it will look like it is bullet number 9 on this PDF. This question here was supposed to be its own bullet. Okay. So we're going to pick up right away with bullet number 11. So we're in the section of unmanageability, page 5. And we're looking at bullet number 11 under that section. You see there are 2 question marks there. So we have answer 11A and 11B. Do I maintain a crisis mentality, responding to every situation with panic? How has this affected my life? I want to take some time here to answer this 10A. I want to answer it more so in the past when I first came into the rooms, because I think it's very important at this time that whoever is doing their step one, that you look at your crisis mentality, right? If I answer it in the here and now, periodically I do, but I have more tools today that allows me to calm things down. Mostly my breathing and prayer and meditation to calm things down in the moment and change the chemicals that are in my brain and settle me down. Okay. But I want to answer it in the past. So 10A for me, do I maintain a crisis mentality, responding to every situation with panic? The answer is yes, comma, responding to every situation with panic. Yes. It doesn't really give like this open-ended question. It's assuming that you know yourself well enough to be able to answer yes or no. And I would say yes in both of those together in 10A. I maintained a crisis mentality because everything was about me. Anything that changed what I had planned was a crisis. Anything that interrupted what I was doing, I hated unexpected company. Anything that changed what I had planned to do, my next one, my happy hour, my whatever it was I needed to do or wanted to do for myself, became a problem. I operated in crisis mode because it was effectual, meaning that it could jumpstart me into a sense of urgency that would allow me to lie and manipulate and control other people with the sense of urgency that I had. Okay. Responding to every situation with panic. It got more done for me than allowing myself to stay in my true, authentic self at that time, which was depressed, lifeless, depressed, not wanting to engage the world. I had been trained to be an extrovert, but I was truly a very shy individual. And it took a lot of hype in order for me to show up in the world and carry on and perform, show my face and do the things I needed to do. Okay. Let's look at 10B. How has this affected my life? No one wants to be around a drama queen or king, right? So 10B, it caused other people to have pause when they would engage. And I could see that the more that my hype, the higher my level of hype, the less engaged people over a period of time wanted to become. I just wore them out. And even still today, I think there's people that, like I have some fellow students that I hate to even talk about my health circumstances. One, I'm much older than the majority of them. I would say one lady, I'm probably 5 years older, and then the rest, I'm somewhere between 5 and 10. I am certainly the eldest student in the class. Now, so I'm aging, right? And so when I talk about my health, the things that I'm encountering are not the same thing a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old or even a 23-year-old is experiencing. So a lot of times I don't even want to mention what's going on. When they talk about prayer, does anyone have a prayer request? A lot of times I don't even mention, because their response is most of the time, oh my gosh, you Satan is not giving you a break. And I'm like, thanks a lot, right? Uh, thanks a lot. I'm glad to hear that nobody thinks I'm getting a break. It's not encouraging at all. So most of the time I don't even bring it up. And so what has happened is that I've learned that when I'm in panic mode or I'm operating in this crisis mentality, people get worn out. They'll run with you for a while, maybe for the short haul, but for the long haul, they end up getting tired and not wanting to keep your company. And I'm just talking about recently having real life experiences wearing people out and not even having a crisis mentality about it, even though it is actually a real crisis. Less known, fabricating one in my own mind. And then that makes me create unrealistic expectations of myself and others. Okay, we spent enough time on that one. So you now will go to your 10A, B, A, and B and write your own answer. This is 11. This question is number 11. Not even number 11. Let me tell you something. This is 11A and B. This was 10. This is 11A and B. I misspoke. Okay. Stick with me though, because you should have this one here where our last covered is 10A and B. And this is 11A and B. Okay. So that's my 11A and my 11B. I wish this PDF file would allow me to write in here, but I am not able to. Okay. So right here, we are looking at bullet number. We're going to look at bullet number 12. And I am going to just do something really quick here that might be helpful. I can't guarantee that it's helpful, but it might be helpful. And then I'm going to take this over here. Okay, watch what I do. All right. This is just taking a second, but I want to make sure that I solidify this for you. So if I don't take the opportunity to do it now, it won't happen. Okay. Okay. Right. So this is number 12. Okay. And it says, do I ignore signs that something may be seriously wrong with my health or my children, thinking things will work out somehow? Do I ignore signs that something may be seriously wrong with my health or with my children? So I'm answering this from the past as someone coming into the program. Absolutely. Yes. The answer is yes. Thinking things will work out somehow. Yes and yes. Describe. Now that's where I write my comma. So yes, yes, comma. Oftentimes I avoided going to the doctor. I was in so much pain and I was really fearful. Fear was dictating my every move. And I was really fearful that I was very, very, very sick with something that would be incurable. Most of the time, I ended up in surgery through a visit to the ER. And that's why we tell people when you get to the program, when you first get to the program, and you can look in our new literature called the Living Clean book, and it talks about our health. When you get to the program, it is in your best interest to go see your physician, see a doctor. If you don't have insurance, you probably can get it free, but it's best for you to go and be seen. And a lot of times, although I don't recommend misuse of the emergency room, you might have an emergency that will come up, like a chest pain. Go to the ER, let them run their tests, and ask that social worker that's going to come in or registration. Let registration know you need to see a social worker to make sure you have insurance, and they will let you know um, where you can go see a physician, because there's many physicians that will allow you to come in knowing that you would qualify for Medicaid, and use that as a jump start. That's my suggestion. Use that visit to the ER as a jump start into knowing what's going on with your physical health. All right. So I told you my answer and why. I was afraid of death. I was afraid of what I might be told. Fear of the unknown. Okay, now we're going to go here and we're going to be looking at number 13. 13, again, has one question, but it has a describe. When in real danger, have I ever been either indifferent to that danger or somehow unable to protect myself as a result of my addiction? Describe. There are many times when I first came into the program that I can recall that I was sexually abused, taken advantage of, manipulated, even I would say extorted out of my finances. And there should have been some telltale signs. But because I was so high, I dropped my guard. And after you drop your guard, when you're high and you drop your guard and you're outnumbered or overpowered, you don't have many choices. And so I would succumb or be subjected to the consequences of my indifference to that danger and inability now because I'm incapacitated to protect myself. So the answer is yes, and that's my description. And yours will probably be somewhat similar. Now, for some men, it may not be the same, the era that I came up in, but there are many men that have also been abused that way as a direct result. Let's say a direct result of anything. Actually, the person just is acting criminal, actually. But we put ourselves in these predicaments and then we can't get out of. Number 14. Have I ever harmed someone as a result of my addiction? And then describe. Okay, so I'm going to again go back to pre-program, right? Before I came to Narcotics Anonymous. Have I ever harmed someone as a result of my addiction? Yes. I most certainly have. Describe. So that is a closed-ended question. That's a yes. And then describe. Now, here's where your describe may become encumbered because for some people, let's say, for instance, someone that has possibly murdered someone or maybe a drunk driving accident and really injured someone horribly, um, beaten someone, raped someone, molested someone, demeaned someone, bullied someone, right? These are all things that are not considered socially acceptable. So, as you answer this question, and as I answer it, in the back of my mind, you are probably thinking, how far do I want to go with this answer, especially if I'm writing this down, right? And what I did may have been criminal, and it may not have been. For many of us, it was criminal. We just didn't get arrested or it never came to light. Okay. This is not your fourth step where you may go into more detail, but this is giving you a heads up. We're talking about unmanageability and how the disease of addiction, our actively using that obsession and compulsion, caused us to hurt other people. That we wouldn't have done it had we been clean because we would have been clear-minded and focused. Okay. So my answer is yes for number 14. Describe. I remember that I would lie to certain men, put it like that. I would lie to certain men about the depth of my interest in them. And I had several men at one time that had proposed to me and I was engaged to marry. And at the end of the day, I didn't have any intention on marrying any of them. And I really wasn't trying to necessarily mislead them. But again, in my disease of addiction, in my clouded thinking, I could not figure out how to work myself out of this pretense of a relationship I had got myself into. I didn't know how to tell the truth that there wasn't just someone else, there were several someone else's. I really wasn't serious about any of them. And I would say by the grace of God, there was one that was quite suicidal behind it. And I really feared for their lives. And at that time, I really I couldn't come completely clean and walk away from them because they were threatening to take their life. So I ended up being, if you will, retracting, my wanting to break up with them. I ended up staying with them until they came to their senses and came to their own awareness and ended it on their own. And when they ended it, I was so grateful. I said, I'll never get myself into that mess again. And I got myself into other messes, but I didn't get myself into a mess of having more than one, uh, pretentious monogamous relationship. If I could put it like that, it wasn't a real monogamous relationship, right? It was pretentious. Okay, I never did that again. Can't even say I never did that again. I mean, I actually married someone and wasn't faithful to them, but they also knew that I was done. So I wasn't pretentious in any kind of way with them. Now let's look at number 15. Okay. I hope this little number thing helps you. 15. Do I have temper tantrums or react to my feelings in other ways that lower my self-respect or sense of dignity? Describe. I had temper tantrums outside of recovery and within the rooms of recovery. It really wouldn't take a whole lot to set me off in a meeting. So 15A, my answer is yes. And then comma describe. And then I would go into discussing my behavior outside of recovery. If a person and I were in a disagreement and I ended up putting my um, hands on them, it probably was a direct result of them saying something that infuriated me and caused me to cry. I hated for people to see me cry. I would endure the most outrageous types of torture. This is my own story. I would endure torture, and the torture would become worse because I refused to show emotion. I felt like it was a weakness and I refused to show it. So if a person pushed me to the point where I would begin to cry, they could almost rest assured that I was going to put my hands on. And that was embarrassing because even then, I talked a lot about God. I talked like I just knew so much about spirituality and religion, and I knew a lot, but I wasn't living a lot. So it was embarrassing quite often to have people say, yeah, you're real spiritual, aren't you? Yeah, lady. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, here we are at 16. It hasn't been that long. We're at 16, and it says, and this is the last bullet under unmanageability. Did I take drugs or act out on my addiction to change or suppress my feelings? Yes, 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 and absolutely more yeses. Absolutely. Of course I did. Right? I use drugs to change. I use certain drugs to change my depression and make me more hyper. And then I use certain behaviors to calm my nerves. I use sex a lot of times to calm my nerves. I didn't smoke cigarettes or weed or anything like that. Um, but I would use promiscuity in a sense and certain drugs to change. As one young lady I met, she said that she used drugs to help her do normal everyday things. And I can definitely relate to that. So that is 16A. You have 16A, and then you're going to also have 16B. Okay. So 16B is the second portion right here. What was I trying to change or suppress? I was trying to change my production level. Depression would cause me not to want to produce. And there was a high standard in my household that we would bring the best grades home, educationally speaking. And we would walk away from our high school years with enough information that would allow us to get into entry level positions for people that maybe had an associate's or a bachelor's. So there was a high level uh, of expectation for me to perform. So I used drugs to change my energy, my output, my ability to stay up and study or produce. And I would also use drugs to suppress anxiety mostly. I would say anxiety mostly, anger sometimes, um, and self-loathing, depression, right? Okay. How are you guys doing? I am going to come back here, and we still have quite a bit that we need to cover. I am seeing that we have um, reservations. Okay. So we have that section to cover. We have, after reservations, we're going to have um, the next section will be on page 6, entitled Surrender and Spiritual Principles. So we will have that to cover, right? Surrender and spiritual principles. So what I can commit to you is that we will do about, I would say, we would do reservations and surrender. So that's one more video, and then spiritual principles and moving on together. So I'm going to create 2 more videos for you within the next 24 hours before I go into surgery, because I want for you to have all of your step 1 sample done, where you can actually come back to it, listen to how I'm answering the questions, how I'm numbering them, and then move on and be done with this. And it'd be perfect timing, because by the time you get done with this, it'll be February, probably the end of February. And you can get a hold of me. I should be back available towards the end of February to cover some of your step 1s with you individually on Zoom. Hopefully by then you might have a regular sponsor, and you can let them know that you've done step 1 and would like to go over it with them. Okay. So just stay fluid with that, because sometimes we put these heavy expectations on ourselves, and when we aren't able to meet them, we get depressed and we start this self-loathing, negative talk to ourselves, and we start pulling back from doing the work just because we don't have all of the ducks in a row. And I don't consider your doing your step 1 with me as you doing them by yourself, because I'm giving you every bit of guidance, right? I'm giving you every bit of guidance to help you through and to understand. And I am available at recoveryofhope21@gmail.com, where you can ask me any question on any of these. Use the numbering system, or maybe just write the question out and tell me what page it is on the flat book, and I will dialogue with you through email as well. And when I get back up and running, then I will be booking appointments with you, sort of like a virtual sponsor, but you're going to see my face. I'm not going to be behind the scene. You're not going to see this version of me. You're going to see the real me, with a beautiful monarch butterfly behind me, and we are going to cover your steps. Okay. So I don't want you backing away because of that. Don't let that be the reason. Don't let other people's opinion of how you're doing your step 1 be the reason, because I'm more than qualified to be able to cover this information with you. And I want to make sure that you also have an opportunity to benefit from this program the way that I have. That's the very least that I can do, is to make sure you have a way of going through your steps. And so thank you again for listening. I look forward to our next coverage of the steps. Surrender. It won't be surrender. Which one will it be? I'm sorry. Reservations and surrender. And then after that, I will do one more. And that one will be on spiritual principles and the closing part, right? Spiritual principles. And I moved too fast. Need to get back up here. Moving on. Okay. So we're going to do that together, and it's going to be a beautiful time. It's really going to be a beautiful time. When we get to not the next podcast, but the one after that, spiritual principles, you see that right here where I have it highlighted, and you see those questions right there. That part, spiritual principles and moving on, might be a little bit more lengthy, and I might have to add just one more podcast. But I don't anticipate having to do that, because I don't have too much time to actually get you through this before my surgery. So that's my goal, okay, in the next 24 hours, to have that all completed. Yeah, take care of yourself, and I'll be talking to you soon. Thanks for listening.